now tuned in to the Cold Hard Truth, Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Stuff. Ooh, bedhead.
Wow.
Ooh, like the mellow after sun conditioner and some shampoo from Bedhead.
So we're not
Nice.
kidding around with the swag bag.
That's a little, yeah.
That's worth about $200. So
for
that's
sure it is.
That's what you get when you come to the Slumber Party
Yeah.
Under the Stars on Saturday night, November 20th.
Wow.
And again, tickets available at eventpro.ky. Just $60, and we're raising money.
And this bag you can use for a lot of other stuff. It's so nice. Wow.
For sure.
That's great. Yeah. So, and obviously, again, it's all for a great cause. So there you go.
All right, time is 7:28.
Big news. I have some important news for you.
Interesting news.
It's Blake and Darren's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
K-Man's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Good morning, Sandy.
Morning.
Sandy Hill.
Hello, good morning.
There she is.
Okay.
We're thinking maybe you have the audio issues today.
Yeah, sorry. Yesterday
No.
our studio computer died. We ended up being a power supply
Oh gosh.
issue, so that had to be replaced. And voila, we're back.
Awesome. Awesome.
Voila.
A lot of technology.
Yeah.
Gotta love it.
I know it's amazing how much we rely on technology, and then when
Yeah.
something goes haywire, the wheels just come off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
thankfully, you had the resources to fix it quickly.
Right? Yes, exactly. Shout out to our good friend who knows IT.
Yeah, yeah.
IT man.
Our
It's
IT
just,
guy.
yeah.
Let's move on.
Anyway.
What's up, Sandy? What's
Nothing to see
news?
here.
We're still waiting on some results, as it turns out. Nothing new on that front. So it really seems like I think public health is struggling a little bit with these numbers. So, yeah.
And the lateral flow tests haven't helped alleviate any of that.
I can only imagine what it would be like if we didn't have the lateral flow tests. Let me put it that way.
Okay.
So, yes, I think that the truth of the matter is that they weren't really ready for this, So they're trying to get ready, but
we spoke to the governor. He'll be on actually this morning at 7:45. So just a little bit with a fireside COVID chat. And we do delve into the lateral flow tests and the amount of tests that the government has ordered. They have not arrived yet, though.
No.
Okay. So we actually have the premier on the program today, and he will be answering a number of COVID-related questions for anyone who's interested. But yes, there are a lot of questions. I've been fielding questions even beforehand because people are just trying to understand how the process is going to work, and so we're getting his Q&A segment ready as we speak. So and news, though, we want to say congratulations to the Sunrise Center. They have celebrated 35 years. As you guys know, they're an adult training center for people differently abled. And so they've just celebrated 35 years this week. So congratulations to them.
Oh, nice.
That's cool.
Excellent.
Congrats.
And in other news, court has been extremely interesting over the last couple of days. So we reported a lady who gave testimony yesterday in court that one of her alibis, she had a lot of different excuses that were a bit confusing, but one of the alibis that was pretty interesting is that supposedly she was having an extramarital affair with a guy. And that explained why she had an alibi on the night of the Tortuga robbery. But he took the stand in support of the prosecution and said he's never had an affair with this woman. And so this
usually when you get an alibi, you need to
you should check it with the other person first.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. You're like, I wasn't involved.
Do they know that you're involved?
Yeah. Like, don't drag me into your nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this dude is like, no.
Even if they were having an affair, it wasn't that night.
Yeah. He said, no, it was no affair. And she kind of like, oh yeah, she was kind of vague initially about it. Like, oh, we had something going on. And then yesterday in court, she came right out and said, oh yes, we had something going on that night. And since then, and it was kind of like, okay then.
That's easily, checked after. So.
Well, listen, his word versus her word. I guess the judge will have to determine who she finds more credible.
Not all criminals.
It just reminds me of this song. Hold on.
This song right here.
Hold on. This song.
This song. Oh, this song.
Yes.
It wasn't me.
Oh, yeah.
I'll only play 15 seconds so you don't get in Facebook jail.
I know, right? Not today of all days.
Anyway.
Yeah, we definitely know the song. Trust me.
It wasn't me.
It wasn't me. Well, that should be her anthem song for the entire trial. It wasn't me. Right. Whoever robbed Tortuga, it wasn't me.
Well, don't do the crime if you can't do the time. I don't even know how it works. I said the wrong thing.
Don't do the crime if you can't do the time.
I said pay the time.
If you can't stand the kitchen, get out of the heat.
Yeah. If you can't stand the
if you can't stand the heat.
I know.
If you can't stand the heat, get out of the office.
Yeah. Aaron is not good at sayings.
I'm always messing him up.
And the prison confirmed as of, I think, Friday that they had 20 inmates that were actually positive. And so they've rolled out a policy on how to deal with those. So, yeah.
We've always known that in prisons, we've seen this in other countries.
Super hard.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you heard this, Sandy. I know you're a big watcher of General Hospital on TV. Don't you love that?
Are you?
That soap opera? Aren't you a big watcher of that?
I don't think I've ever watched General Hospital in my life, actually.
I thought that was your jam.
No,
you don't sit around watching.
How would you think that Sandy watches
I'm
General
joking.
Hospital? Oh, okay.
Anyway,
I used to watch General Hospital.
This is a story that I just came across.
When I was younger,
Okay,
and it was on TV.
Do you know the guy that plays Jax on General Hospital? He's been on.
This was the 90s when I watched General Hospital.
He's been on the show for 25 years.
Oh, really?
Okay.
Then
He plays-
let me see.
He plays the role of Jasper Jax on ABC's General Hospital.
Okay, he's someone that's probably died and came back as another person.
I know, right?
Actually.
Yeah.
He is an anti-vaxxer.
Oh, on General Hospital or in just real
life.
Oh, okay. So he's losing his job.
And because he the show or the TV network or whatever has mandated vaccines, they've let him go after 25 years
Well,
of being on the show.
yeah. I mean, listen, it's a weird hill to die on. Is that the saying?
I wonder how they're going to kill him off now. This will be interesting. Shall they make it realistic and say he died of COVID?
Absolutely. That's what I would do.
That's a good one. I think that so. I mean, you know what they could do is they always have them. They have the character because obviously the character's alike to one.
There he is, folks. There's Jax. I've never watched his show. So
you put him on?
Yeah, there you go.
So there you go. That's okay. I know who you're talking. So I've seen his picture before, but basically what they're going to do is they'll kill him off some way. And then they'll bring back another actor who's probably actually vaxxed in real life. And then
they'll make him Jax.
They'll be like, yeah, that person takes over, you know?
It's hard to replace an iconic person, though, that has been in the position for years. Like, you're better off just killing off the character, I think.
They do it all the time. I remember they changed the girl once. And now that other girl that they replaced with her, she's but same character, but it was just different actors. She went on to do it for a long time. She might still be on one of those sitcoms. I can't even remember which one it is. But again, I used to watch these when I was younger with my mom. She would be like ironing and watching General Hospital. I was trying to remember the name. And what was the?
I'll tell you the one that I used to.
What was the one Eileen was on? Eileen from the Real Housewives of
My mom used
Beverly
to watch
Hills.
the Like Sands Through the Hourglass.
That's one. Days of Our Life.
Days
That's
of
the
Our-
one
I was
that
gonna
I
say.
Days of Our
That's the one
Lives.
that I'm talking about where the famous actress went by. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people in Cayman love Days of Our Lives. But back in the day when I was like elementary school and I'd come home, have my cookies and get, half an hour to watch TV. My show was Guide and Light. That was my soap opera. My aunt was in Cayman, so
that's right.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out which one Eileen Davidson was
General
on.
Hospital is the OG of all the soap operas. I think it's.
Is it?
I think so.
I think Days of Our Lives was the best. Days of Our Lives. Yeah, Eileen Davidson is in Days of Our Lives.
There you go.
There you go.
I could probably watch that now, and I could probably be right back into the storyline after not seeing it for 20-some years.
I mean, I just can't believe it's how
you pick right back up. Nothing's changed, evidently.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, well, that was a fun conversation about what's going on in Cayman.
Yeah, and in the soap opera world.
Yeah.
For those that watch. All right, Sandy, anything else?
Just that, although we're in the middle of a pandemic and we've been shut down, apparently Cayman has still been named a top island to visit in the Caribbean and the Atlantic. So that's some accolades from Condé Nast Traveler magazine.
Awesome. Well, I would agree. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after November 20th, it'll be one of the greatest places to visit.
Even better after the next phase.
Exactly.
Another phase. Yeah.
Well, good to see you this morning. Catch us live on Facebook and YouTube now. We'll see you tomorrow.
All right, guys. Have a good day.
See you later.
Bye.
Awesome. All right. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. How are you guys doing? So good to see you. Give me 1 second and then we can do our morning greetings and shout out. We are expecting the premiere with us shortly. And he does have cabinet. Is it cabinet or caucus? What day is it? Tuesday. I think Tuesday's cabinet a bit later on. So we're going to jump into that. Get your questions ready. Ready like Freddy. So yes. Yesterday was a very interesting day in court. Ooh-wee. We're going to talk about it on Friday. So I've earmarked Friday because tomorrow is Wednesday. The lawyers will do their final, their closing arguments. And so we will jump in on Friday and talk about Eve High Voltage. Man, it is. I wish all of you could have been there for this trial, but I will do my best to encapsulate what transpired. Good morning to the lovely Mitzi. Good morning to Alice. Don't miss Friday's show then. That's your cue. Good morning, Olivia. Charlene is here. Wendy Ann is here. So good to see you, Wendy. Diamond Princess Sapphire's got it locked in. Felicia, Catherine, Miss Wee Wee's always got it locked in. Thank you for the support, Miss Wee Wee. We've got Evelyn. Louis is here. Top of the morning to you. Louis, thank you for sending the pictures of your dogs this morning. They're beautiful, actually. Really gorgeous. Miss Sue's here with her tea. I've got, 50 by 50 is coming up here shortly. We're going to be launching it officially. As you guys know, I'm going to be trying to lose about 50 pounds by the time I hit 50. So that's the goal. And one of the habits that I'm slowly trying to adopt every single morning is breakfast. And I know that that sounds easy to say, let's just eat breakfast, Sandy, what's the problem? But yeah, it's not that easy. Let me put it that way. So this morning for breakfast, so yesterday I had a little packet of oatmeal. So this morning I'm going to do an apple. I love apples. Apples come in all flavors. There's, I don't know how many variety of apples there are, but I feel like there's a lot of variety of apples. So I always get a few different ones that come in the bag. They're easy. For me, they're actually really, really easy to like eat. You know, you can just cut them up and have them on the go. My daughter loves apples as well. You know, kids go through this phase where initially they don't want to eat the skin of an apple. Thank goodness she's kind of over that now. So she'll actually eat the skin. Although I think a lot of times she still kind of eats around the skin. But anyway, I think she will eat it sometimes. So I eat the whole thing because the skin, I think, has got good fiber in it. So an apple for breakfast is what I'm having today, just FYI. We've got Dawn locked in. We've got Miss Emma, Evelyn, another Emma. We got two Emmas locked in right now. Good morning to all of you. Suzette is here. Suzette still watches Days of Our Lives, The Young and the Restless, and The Bold and the Beautiful. Really? Are they all still on? Like on regular TV? Because I know some of them went into, like they only stream online. So I'm curious, Suzette, if you still watch those on regular TV. Yeah, when I came out, I was so surprised at how everybody came out and was like into Days of Our Lives. It was legit a thing. Yeah. So I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I watched a little bit of it. So I feel like I know some of the characters. Like, what was that crazy lady who, I think she was demon possessed or something, that character. I saw that for a minute. Who else was on Days of Our Lives? Was Stefano on Days of Our Lives? Stefano and, what's the other lady's name? But yeah, listen, soap opera careers are like, they really made it for some people. Like, I wouldn't know who Alison Sweeney was if it wasn't for Days of Our Lives. You know what I mean? These soap operas have made iconic characters. There's Stefano. There's, who else am I thinking of? I mean, truly, Bo and, oh God, what were their names again? They were Days of Our Lives too, right? Yeah, there's Bo and what's the other girl's name that he was always with? Oh my goodness. I can't remember now. But anyway, you guys know who I'm talking about. So 54 years, Days of Our Lives seems to have been around for at least. Wow, Leanne Rimes was actually on Days of Our Lives. What? Jensen Ackles, he's the guy who's on that TV series Supernatural. He was on Days of Our Lives. So a lot of people, like, you go back, and T-Boz from TLC actually showed up on Days of Our Lives. Eileen Davidson, so she played Kristen and Susan. So she's been on there for a minute. Lisa Rinna, that's how Lisa Rinna became more or less a household name. She played Billy. It was Bo and Hope. Yes, Bo and Hope. So she was in some kind of love triangle with them. So somebody said, yes, they're going down memory lane with me. Bo, Hope, Stefano, what was his name? Stefano, Marlena, Sammy, and Austin. So yes, all of those persons were on the show. But yeah, some really iconic individuals over the years. But oh, Kyle Richards was in Days of Our Lives. Interesting. Okay. Mila Kunis was in Days of Our Lives back in 1994. She was a kid back then. Interesting. Pamela Anderson, Vivica Fox was in Days of Our Lives, and The Young and the Restless. So yeah, it's there's been a lot of really good soap operas. But yeah, the original soap opera was Guiding Light. And I don't know, my aunt was just into it, and as a result, apparently it went off air in, was it 2009 already? Has it been that long? But it was on from 1952. So in the 80s, it was still on for a really long time. I kind of feel like Guiding Light might have been the longest running soap opera. But yeah, my aunt was really into it. And so, I would come home from school and, she'd have it on anyway. And it was just the perfect time that I would come on. And so I would get home and I'd have my little cookies or whatever snack was available, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches or whatever. And, yeah, that was the thing to sit down with her and watch. I cannot believe that it's been off air since 2009, really. So they had some really interesting storylines and stuff as well. I can't seem to really remember anybody, like their character names in Days of Our Lives right now, or on Guiding Light right now, but that was the thing. Yeah. So good morning, Diana. How are you? Chantal is here. Good morning to you. Good morning, Tracy. Can't wait for Kevin's show tonight. Yes. Make sure you all get lined up for Kevin's show. It's going to be a good one. Diabetes and COVID, folks. You don't want to miss this one. Dr. Kumar will be joining Kevin. Now, let me tell you what, Dr. Kumar is, very, very knowledgeable. I didn't know that there was such a thing as what's the correct word? Diabetologist. That's a bit of a tongue twister. And diabetologist and general practitioner over total health. But he's going to be joining Kevin this evening, talking about, if you're diabetic, if you're pre-diabetic, which a lot of people are, you want to pay very, very close attention to this evening's show. So Aliano's got it locked in. Hola. Magdalene is here. Thank you for tagging Suzette. Malis is also here. She says Travel Command Portal was supposed to be updated last night to show phase 4 coming. Still nothing. Ooh, yay. Johan, good morning. What time does the interview, the premiere starts? It's going to be starting in 2 seconds. Just saying good morning to everyone. Good morning, Loriana. By the way, Johan, you did say good morning. I was going to say, I know your mama taught you better than that. Marlena, morning. Anne-Marie is here. Chantal. Sue says, had her booster shots yesterday, Savannah MP office. So busy with lots of people. And it was very busy because, in fact, I drove by. Funny enough, somebody called me and they said, what's going on at the Savannah office? And I said, well, let me think about it for a second. And then I remembered that they were having the regional booster or COVID clinic basically available. And yes, folks, there were tons of people. Like the line was outside, down the fence sort of thing. I was really, really happy to see so many people turn out because, that's just a wonderful sign that people are finally, I think a lot of people have listened. We're almost at 80%. People are taking the vaccination extremely seriously. And, that's good news, I think, for everyone, to be quite frank and honest. And the more the community spread occurs, the more seriously people are taking it. So, Sue, I'm so happy that you were able to get your vaccine shot sorted out. I'm going to just pull up a quick picture in case you missed it on our page. And someone sent me a private message yesterday, said, Sandy, thank you so much for all that you have done as it relates to encouraging people to get vaccinated. That they really appreciated that. So you're most welcome. So here's what was happening at the Savannah office yesterday. Look at that. The line was, and people were just patiently waiting. They had on their mask. I'm assuming everybody got through. I don't know if the premier knows how many people actually got vaccinated yesterday at that office, how many shots were dispersed, but we can certainly ask him that as well this morning. So I know you guys have lots and lots of questions for him, so we're going to bring him on. Good morning to everyone. If I neglected to say good morning, Kathleen. Luis is here, Brandy. Thank you all for tuning in. So Irvin used to enjoy Falcon Crest. Yeah, what channel was that on? I've heard of it, but I never really watched it. Santa Barbara says Suzette was her show. Morning King joining us from the UK. He says, I'm listening in today. Vernita's here. Sue says the USA is open out to everyone who's had their vaccines. They can go, and they certainly are as of yesterday. Morning, Miss Rita. All right, so let's bring the premier in. Good morning, Premier Panton. How are you?
I'm fine, Sandra. Good morning to you. Good morning to all your listeners. And it's a pleasure to be able to talk to everyone in our wonderful Cayman Islands. Of course, I am still in quarantine, so you might see a little bit of a quarantine shadow going on right here. So apologies for that.
You gotta get one of these filters that I put on these days. Every day you can
I don't have a makeup crew or anything going on around here, so it's just exactly. Me.
So where are you actually quarantining? Are you quarantining at home in a separate section of your home, or?
No, I'm quarantining somewhere else.
Okay. Yeah, no worries. So, a lot of people have been talking about the difficulties sometimes of even trying to find a quarantine facility if they have to travel. So, yeah, there we go. All right. So Charlene says, good morning, Honorable Premier. Blessed day to you.
Good morning, Charlene.
Good morning to Sonia. So we have tons of questions, Q&A segment with the Premier this morning, and we were fielding questions even in advance of the program. So we've got tons of those. So we'll just do it like quick fire, pop, ask the questions because we've got lots of those. So folks, again, you're watching a segment this morning with the Honorable Premier Wayne Panton. He has agreed to come on. I think we're going to try maybe twice a month with a Q&A segment with the Premier, and then we'll see how that goes. So first of all, congratulations on your trip to Scotland. I received some video footage yesterday. I haven't had a chance to play it as yet, but someone just recorded it off their phone. And they were saying that the BBC did a special, segment on how the impact of global warming will actually have a negative impact on the Caribbean in particular. So this person messaged me and said, on bad news, I was trying to find for you the interview in the BBC News this morning in Glasgow with Dr. Colin Young, who is at the COP, who's there on behalf of the Caribbean. He said that the conference did not go too well for the Caribbean last week. Basically, we're screwed if things don't change climate-wise. And they were asking if I'd seen it. And so they actually sent it to me. We can play that a bit later on, folks. But the position, I think, worldwide is pretty precarious. And the Caribbean in particular, because of ocean levels and so on, we're going to have a tough time. What was your take on the conference? I know you were there for the initial stages of it. So apparently it goes on for, is it 2 weeks?
2 weeks, yes.
And then the rest of it will be
strategic
planning.
Ends on Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah, I went to the first 3 days of it. I decided I would. Originally, the plan was to go for a week, because on Saturday we had the Nature Day, and we had some of our wonderful Cayman Islands representatives, and in particular Deja Lyons, who was speaking so well on the panel representing Cayman. But I really decided there were too many things for me to do here. I couldn't really afford to be away for that length of time. So I decided to do the first 3 days. That's when, you have most of the world leaders and the Commonwealth leaders and stuff who are there. And you get all the opening segment. So that was excellent. There are, lots of different groups that are representing the issues across the world. And there was a very big Caribbean contingent. We had a lot of people from a lot of the leaders from CARICOM. We have representatives from other overseas territories. I think I was the only premier there representing the overseas territories. But I think, the difficulty is that in another 2 weeks, we're supposed to have the Joint Ministerial Council meetings with the UK and all the overseas territories. So it would be very difficult to go for a week or 2 weeks, and then come back and then go again, or just stay. If I stayed, I would be gone a total of 3 weeks, and that just wasn't going to work for me. There are just too many things going on, with the reopening, the lifting of quarantine on the 20th, and all the other issues that we have locally that we have to deal with. I decided there was no way I could justify spending that amount of time out. So I will be, at this point, I'm planning to participate in JMC virtually, and I went to do a few days of COP. But it was very inspiring to have so many young people there representing their various countries. Certainly for us, we have a significant contingent of young people at COP representing Cayman, and they're there speaking out, and they are expressing their concerns and their views, and they're basically demanding that the world do something to protect their future. And that, to me, that is very good for Cayman, very good for the Caribbean, and it's very heartwarming to see young people being engaged and speaking with such passion on issues that I care about, because I'm here not because of any interest of my own, other than trying to basically make sure that my generation leaves a legacy behind which serves the interests of our children and their children and so on.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's I think it's a precarious situation, and probably a lot of people are wondering, like, what can they do on an individual level? So maybe another day we can kind of do a specific Q&A for protecting the environment here in the Cayman Islands. But you got a little bit of criticism, and of course we do want to ask you about this, for a photo that was in circulation where it appeared that all the world leaders in that photo were not wearing their masks. Can you address that for the benefit of anyone who's really concerned? People are like, oh, well, obviously there's a different standard for world leaders. Tell us a little bit about that photo moment.
So that photo was at an event which Prince Charles was hosting. It's called his Terra Carta event, which is basically an award program that he does, supporting all the major companies in the world that are committing to zero carbon emissions by a certain date, committing to pushing sustainability across all of their operations. So in the photo you have there, for example, in the immediate background between us is Brian Moynihan from he's the CEO of Bank of America in the US. So it really wasn't a world leaders meeting. It was mainly a meeting of many of the leaders and CEOs of some of the biggest companies in the world that are participating in this program. So, Lloyd's and State Street and many other financial services companies were there. And why are we not wearing masks? Well, we were required to do PCR tests every couple of days. I certainly had one, I think, the day before this photo. Every single day you had to do lateral flow tests and register those with the NHS. So a lot of steps were taken to make sure that everybody was not infected, was virus free. So there was a lot going on there. There's a lot of steps being taken to protect the safety and health of people. The other thing is that particular event was inside an old cathedral, which I'm guessing the ceiling was probably about 70 to 80 feet high. The room was about 100 feet by maybe about 70 or 80 feet. And there was about maybe 100 people in there. So effectively, it was almost as as good as being outside. So given the combination of things, the short duration of the event and the fact that we were all tested frequently, I think that significantly or perhaps all but eliminated the risk of anybody being sick.
And otherwise you were wearing a mask.
Absolutely. Everywhere else, all the other COP events, you were wearing a mask. That was one of the few occasions where I didn't wear a mask for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say short, literally it was, I don't even think it was 15 minutes. So that was a rare situation. All the other events, you're wearing masks. And the only time you take your mask off is when you're going to speak. I think we would have seen some of the world leaders. Let's say, I know a lot of people watched and remember David Attenborough and Mia Motley during their opening presentations. You would have seen them taking their masks off when they go up to speak and stuff. So everybody was wearing their masks. It's strange how you get very good at identifying people who are walking around with different types of masks on and otherwise disguised. But yeah, that was not something which reflected some sort of risk taking or some sort of privileged position. Trust me, we were all heavily tested, and that was a short duration, and it was in circumstances where it was next to being outside, to be frank.
Mm-hmm. All right, so we have a slew of questions. I'm going to ask our live audience to bear with us as we go through some questions that were sent in advance, and then we'll get to some of your live questions as well. So I'm just sort of tracking back to question number 1. This person says, "Hi, Sandy. Can you ask Wayne tomorrow on your show if the policy regarding minors having to quarantine will change? The government is requiring quarantine for ages 4 to 11, and the vaccine is not available to them. So that's a bit unfair, I think." So let me pause there.
So there's, we've had this discussion quite a bit, about balancing risk versus the interest of having young people and children basically track the vaccine status of their parents. In principle, it was something that we considered going with, but after having discussions with the medical advisors and in particular the CMO, and taking into consideration our current circumstances with the level of transmission, local transmission that has been occurring, I think the conclusion really was that we shouldn't at this point elevate the level of risk by allowing unvaccinated children to come in. Now, I know that there will be a lot of arguments back and forth about that. You might have a 6-month-old or a 1-year-old, for example, who isn't going to present a significant risk because they're in the arms of their parents most of the time. But we also do have, how do you say you can bring in a 1-year-old, but or allow a 1-year-old to come in with the parents, but you can't allow a 5-year-old? It becomes difficult to distinguish the 5-year-old up to the 10-year-old, 11-year-old who can't get vaccinated. Those children, while they're extremely resilient, they're also very, very, very strong vectors. They're able to get infected easily and to spread it very easily. Mm-hmm. So that's where the concern arose. You will recall that the first major outbreak that we had in terms of community transmission would have been in the Georgetown Primary School, and the vast majority of those individuals who are showing up as positive there were children. And what was interesting about that was that in some cases where classes had a lot of positives, the teachers themselves weren't infected, but a lot of the children were. So it really is a good example of how effective children are at generating community spread. And the strong medical advice at this time was not to elevate the level of risk, not to add an additional risk factor into the current equation where we do have some significant community spread. And frankly, I mean, I'm concerned about the level of community spread we have. I'm concerned that it seems to me that some people at least are not taking the right precautions. They don't seem to be taking things that seriously. And I can tell you that, you know, the one thing I watch specifically every single day is the number of admissions to hospital. And that, while the current number and our experience has been that it is the number of hospitalizations has been a lot lower than what you would typically expect for the amount of community spread that we have. And I think that is clearly because of the benefit of the vaccine or vaccines. We must control the level of community spread that we have. We need people to be to adhere to the safety protocols, to adhere to the necessary standards, mask wearing, social distancing, sanitizing of hands, etc., so that we can reduce the level of community spread. Because the more community spread we have, the higher the risk, the greater the possibility that we have more people getting very sick and ending up in hospital. And I can tell you, the first time we have someone die again from this is going to be an excruciatingly painful event, and nobody wants to see that. But that is that's quite a high possibility if we don't control this. The reality is that somewhere around 75 to 80%, sometimes a bit higher, of all people who are in hospital because of COVID symptoms are unvaccinated. And this virus is something which will continue to seek out those people who are unvaccinated and those people who have comorbidities, and it will find the right combination at some point, unfortunately, where we have someone who is unvaccinated, probably not necessarily though, because it can happen to people who are vaccinated. I mean, that's the reality. But the reality also is that the vast majority of people who are in hospital are unvaccinated. And we've got to control the level of local transmission that we have. Personally, I want to try to reduce it by half, and that may mean we need to be tightening up on some of the controls in order to achieve this. Because I mean, there was one day, I think it was last week, I looked at the numbers for BRAC, for example, and there was like 4% of the population of the BRAC that day who were found to be positive, and I found that just astonishing. And that, you know, the sister islands introduce a whole additional element of concern because of the limited degree to which they have medical services there.
Thank you so much for that response. So I guess the next logical question on from that is, if we're trying to control the transmission levels, would you admit that public health is having a difficult time? Because we've got numerous complaints from individuals about the fact that they're unable to even get just a check-in phone call from public health, from travel came out, from anyone. And so what we found, you know, through our own investigations and just people outing other people, in fact, is that a lot of those individuals who knew they were positive were out and about. They were hanging out at bars. They were going to the grocery store. They were going to work. So what will be done to ensure that those individuals isolate or stay home? Are we still looking at penalizing them? Are we going to be hiring more staff in Travel Cayman and public health? Like, what's the actual plan to help to squash the numbers a little bit?
Well, I mean, the first thing I want to say is I want to plead with people. I want to implore people to be responsible, to isolate when you know you're positive, and to remain isolated. I am in quarantine, and I have not. I've been outside. I've been about 10 feet maximum away from the door the whole time. I would venture to say that there are people who are breaching. And I think this is where we got started with community transmission. And this is, I think, a reflection of where we're continuing with this problem, where people are not adhering to the requirements. I have had day before yesterday, I was receiving telephone calls, and then yesterday I received 1 or 2 telephone calls as well, advising of people who were known to be positive who were out. And I made some calls to try to get that under control. Yes, I think it is partly because public health is challenged by the number of people who are involved and who are coming up as positive. This is an issue that we became acutely aware of since the community outbreak started in early September.
Mm-hmm.
And this is an issue that every time we have a meeting with the program board, this is raised and emphasized. Of course, we get, as representatives, we get a lot of the phone calls, we get a lot of the messages, and you will know yourself, Sandy, that I telephone people myself. I will follow up with people who have issues or who have complaints about not having heard from public health.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it is legitimate. Sometimes public health will put their hand up and say, yes, we are stressed. We have a lot going on, and this is our mistake, and we will rectify it. Sometimes there are other things that mean and that public health weren't aware that the individual was positive, and that in itself is a problem that we have to rectify as well.
Mm-hmm.
If there were 2 occasions where the individuals were tested by other centers, and for some reason, and I don't know where the communication broke down. That's something that they have been working on, but for some reason, these individuals didn't appear on the radar for public health, and as I said, that's a concern in itself. But it explains why public health might not have been responsive.
Mm-hmm.
They just weren't aware. But yes, public health has had a lot of people being added. They've added a lot of different staff. They've brought in people from other areas. Certain functions that public health were carrying out have been shifted over to other areas, like the phone center. But they're continuing to work on that. They're continuing to try to improve those scenarios. But of course, at the same time, we have had, over this period of time, we've had growing levels of community transmission, and that doesn't help when you're trying to build in the capacity and trying to address the issues of communication, and having added pressure because of the substantial workloads. So I am very, very sympathetic to the folks who have had difficulties getting through on the phone, on the flu hotline, or getting in touch with someone from public health. But I can promise you that every single day and every time I've seen it, I personally get involved, and I push this issue to try to get it resolved, so that the people of the country who are unfortunately involved in this, whether they're contacts or whether they're positives themselves. We try to get the issue resolved and try to get the service necessary to make it as easy as possible for them. I mean, it's a very stressful situation, and it is very impactful in relation to families, particularly those families that end up having to if isolate for a period of time with their family members. And that's where the lateral flow tests come in, because if you are fully vaccinated and you're not found to be positive, even if you are in a household with a positive, you can go out and go to work, or children under 18 can go to school, provided they're not found to be positive and they're doing lateral flow tests every single day. My switching subjects very slightly. My major concern with lateral flow tests at this point is the costs that are being pushed onto the public is way too high from my perspective. I want to see the cost come down, and this, to me, this is an essential product. We're in a time where we're battling a pandemic, and I want the people of the country to not have to bleed through the nose to be able to acquire these products in order for them to continue with some semblance of normality and be able to go and earn a living or go to school. I've seen prices up to $10 for a lateral flow test. I am somewhat familiar with the pricing of these products, not just here but overseas. I've had to buy some in the UK as well, so I know generally what the pricing looks like. And if people were charging $5 or $6, and let me just say that some are, I'd be happy with that. But when I see the prices at around $8 or $9 or $10, even higher than $7, that's when I have a real problem. And I feel that those people that are entrepreneurs, those people that are retailers, I support them 100% in being able to access these lateral flow tests and make them available to the public. But you don't have to make a killing on this. Yes, you are entitled to earn a profit to reflect the level of risk you take and to encourage you to go ahead and involve yourself in that sort of thing. But when these tests are costing $2 or $3 wholesale, and you're charging 2 or 3 times that, I don't think that's right. And especially more than twice that amount. I am very bothered with that, and I can tell you that if this sort of thing continues, government will take some sort of action in relation to it. And let me remind the public that government very specifically removed the duty on lateral flow tests in order to minimize the impact on the people of the country, because we regard this as an absolutely essential product. And having removed the duty, it is really upsetting to see people being charged exorbitant amounts of money for what is otherwise a very essential product, something that helps to contribute to the working of our safe working of our society, and the public health generally, and the health of individual families. And I'm not happy at all that people are charging significantly higher prices just to make money on this, because they know it's an essential product and everybody needs to be able to, or a lot of people need to be able to access them.
So we do have a watcher who says that in the US, the price is about $10 US. Usually comes in a pack of 2 for about $20. Someone else has a suggestion. How about allowing the general public to import their own? So is there anything stopping?
The US is fine. I don't care what the US are doing. I'm talking about Cayman.
Yeah. Okay.
The US, I don't know what their position is. I do know that they seem to use lateral flow tests a lot less. They seem to be more reliant on PCR testing. But I am talking about Cayman. Like I said, I know in general what the costs are for different volumes of these things, and I think people need to bear in mind that these are essential products that help, as I said, help to contribute to the greater good, to the public health, and to individual families' health. And having to take a lateral flow, if you have to take a $10 lateral flow test for 2 or 3 family members every day, that's the equivalent of people not having perhaps the ability to buy lunch. I'm just not happy with that kind of pricing.
Right. And what is the government doing then, Premier Panton, to bring in lateral flow tests? I know the government had an initial shipment to provide to particularly school children. Are we expecting another shipment in due course? Because pretty much everyone on island has ran out, from what I understand. So what is the current position of the government getting their own supply that can help at least with school children to have some access?
Well, government has been procuring certain supplies, and at the moment, the government has ordered some significant volumes of supplies for the schools in particular. I think the HSA has ordered has a significant supply. That has either been delivered or is on order. So we have, the education ministry has supplies to be able to utilize in the schools, but we've obviously have to increase the volume of these orders. And one of the benefits of doing a very significant high volume order is that you get the benefits of a volume discount. And that, to me, being able to participate in that and to be able to reduce the overall cost, and therefore ultimately, hopefully, the retail pricing on these things will have a significant benefit across the board. I think one of the problems we've had is people have been doing orders, 30, 40, 50,000. So they're not getting the volume discounts, and also they're having to air freight them in, like on passenger flights, in order to get them in time. And that is going to significantly increase your costs as well. But as I said, I'm generally familiar with the overall cost of those scenarios as well, and I still don't believe that it justifies some of the pricing that I have seen. And I implore, as much as I'm asking the people of the country to adhere to the public health protocols and to try to ensure that they protect themselves and protect their families and those that they associate with, I am also imploring the businesses in this country who are selling and making available lateral flow tests. I congratulate them for that, but please bear in mind that these are essential items, and you cannot expect to make a killing off the backs of the people of this country who are already suffering from 18 months of having, or more than 18 months now, of having a lockdown and the impact of no tourism and all that sort of stuff. It is unconscionable, and I want people to bear that in mind. I don't mind them making a reasonable profit at all, but bear it in mind. This is not a flash in the pan thing. You don't have to make a ton of money on this just today, because it's going to be, these things are going to be around for a while. We're going to be utilizing these for in the medium to longer term to help families and help people in the country. So I implore the retailers, obviously the wholesalers, the same applies to them, but I think it's more the retailers that that I think need to look carefully at what they're pricing these things at, because it is having a very serious impact on families. And to your point earlier about people ordering their own. Yes, what I have observed is families and community groups have been talking to each other, getting together, trying to aggregate orders so that they can try to get the benefit of volume discounts and getting getting more wholesale pricing. And I support that. I have been personally trying to get a significant order as well together so that they can be made available to people who really need them. I know families who cannot afford to be paying $7, $8, $9, $10 for a lateral flow test for 4 or 5 family members every day. And I want to be in a position where I can help those people.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, folks, let's see how many of your questions we can get through. Wee Wee's asking about the vaccine for kids being available. The short answer, I can answer that, is no, it's not here yet. I think there was a press release that came out, I want to say on Friday, Wee Wee, that addressed that. So, basically we have to wait on the UK to make that decision, and then it could become available here. So correct. Natalie says, please, can the quarantine period for unvaccinated children return to Cayman be reduced? I think this has been asked and answered. And she mentions lateral flow testing. Good morning to Rachel. Her question is there legislation covering what happens if people refuse to take a self-test or PCR test before attending work or school?
At the moment, it is, we don't have legislation which mandates this sort of thing, but it is within the broader national lateral flow test policy of the government that has been issued, and if necessary, we will put it in legislation to mandate it. In fact, we are working on additional regs right now, which will provide a stronger framework in respect of this. But the concern really is around people who, for example, take a lateral flow test. It indicates that they're positive, and they decide not to self-report. The reality is that is an offense. Under the public health law, you have a positive obligation to report what is otherwise regarded as a communicable disease if you have a positive test, and so they are legally required to report that to public health. And if I know there are people who may be tempted to avoid having to do isolation or to avoid having the impacts of not going to work, that is not worth it, because the people that you impact otherwise, you need to think about them. You need to think about your friends and your work colleagues. The government has programs in place to help people. We help with food. We help make sure that your groceries can be taken care of. That assistance that you need to get medication is taken care of. We have programs which help businesses. We have programs which provide stipends for those people who are negatively impacted by their inability to work. So it is unacceptable for someone to know that they're positive and to continue going about their daily life, because all that does is end up spreading it further and causing greater potential harm to other people. Yes. Now, as I've said, we are one of the reasons that I have fought so hard to get us to where we are with our vaccine distribution is that I firmly believe that it does significantly help us. The evidence so far aligns with that completely. We do not have a lot of people relative to the level of community transmission. We do not have a lot of people in hospital. I don't have the numbers just yet for today, but I can tell you that the last numbers I had, hold on, yes, I do actually have it. So we have let's see, we have 14 people in hospital. In total, 11 of those are unvaccinated.
Wow.
So it shows you the the comparison. 11 of the 14 are unvaccinated. We have 5 who are on supplemental oxygen, just meaning they need some additional oxygen provided. There's nobody who is ventilated. I think those are probably the relevant numbers at this point. But I think that tells us, it makes and emphasizes the point that I'm making, that the vaccines are working. So that's nearly 80%, nearly 79% of the people who are in hospital are unvaccinated. Now that aligns with what we've been saying all along. The vaccines work. The vaccines do not guarantee that you cannot get COVID, but it limits your opportunity. It provides a significant degree of protection against infection, but it is not a guarantee, right? So where it really does help is it significantly reduces hospitalization, and it significantly reduces the possibility that you may be sick enough that your life rather, is at risk. And that is one of the reasons we have fought so hard and gotten down on our knees practically to beg the people of the country to take the vaccines that have been made available to us. That's why we are now over 80% of our population that have been vaccinated. We are now over 80%, and that is an incredible achievement. And I say that in the context of that's 80% of the 71,106 number that we have been using as a revised population number. Now that tells me that we have an excellent vaccination record, and that to me is really what is underscoring our significantly lower level of hospitalizations compared to what you would statistically normally expect for the level of community transmission that we have.
Okay. We have someone who noted that we rely on the honor system for people to self-report, and people need to act responsibly.
I totally agree.
Yep. Ms. Charlene says a dedicated premier, not just seeking accolades and being self-righteous, just love our current premier. Ms. Carol, I think that Carol's question has already been answered in relation to lateral flow pricing and school availability. Cameron, good morning, says, why aren't the travelers doing PCR tests instead of lateral flow tests? Because they are not accurate. Well, travelers are doing PCR tests.
I think what Cameron may be addressing is that some jurisdictions do allow lateral flow tests to be taken instead of PCR tests for travel purposes, and what that typically we do PCR tests. That's typically what we do here, but there are times when perhaps there's a very, very significant volume of testing going on, an unusually high volume of testing going on, and I think it's happened only rarely where they've had to default to lateral flow tests being administered. And I think it was recently reported to me that there was an issue with Cayman Airways saying they weren't accepting lateral flow tests. The U.S., in fact, accepts lateral flow tests, and I think Cayman Airways' position has now been changed to adopt the U.S. position that if a lateral flow test, if you can get a certified or a certificate of negativity from a lateral flow test from a health administrator, then that counts in the same way as a PCR test, a negative PCR test. Not all countries accept it. The US, I understand, are accepting that. But obviously, I think the preferred approach would be a PCR test. Is a PCR test more accurate? Yes, it is. But is a lateral flow test fairly accurate? Yes, they are. The accuracy of these tests have gone up very, very significantly. I know they've, the numbers that the particular manufacturer that is utilized most here is Acon or Flowflex is the brand name, and those ones are claimed to be somewhere around 96 to 98% accurate. Can you get a false positive or a false negative? Yes, of course. They're not 100%. Very, very few things really give you 100%. And even with PCR tests, you can get variations where people have to utilize their professional judgment. If you have PCR tests with a CT value which is like 35 or more, then the health authorities would likely say that person doesn't represent a risk to anybody and should be regarded perhaps as just about or treated as if they're negative.
Okay. All right, folks. Once again, those of you who are joining us a little bit late, there's 433 of you now online. We are obviously doing questions to the Premier this morning, so get your questions ready. I'm going to try to go through as many of them as possible, but we do have to take a brief commercial break. So first of all, let us be reminded that the census 2021 is ongoing. The census is a really, really important exercise that happens about every 10 years, and we're hoping that all of you are participating in the census. So let's not forget that when they come knocking, you don't necessarily have to invite them in, but still participate in the census. Yes. You can do it at the front door. You can sit on the front porch. You can safely social distance, but just participate and give them the information they're asking for.
Beginning the 10th of October, residents across the Cayman Islands will be invited to participate in the 2021 census. What is the census? Simply put, the census is a head count of every person living in the Cayman Islands. The population count and data are protected and authorized by the Statistics Act. The information is confidential and cannot be shared with any law enforcement agencies. Your response helps guide business, social, and economic planning for the future of our islands. The 2021 census will inform decisions on how millions of dollars are allocated for roads, schools, hospitals and healthcare clinics, fire, emergency response services, and other programs. Census enumerators will visit your household, ask a few questions like how many people live in your house, including their age and sex. Every person counts, no matter who you are or where you live. So have your say in the 2021 census.
All right, folks, so have your say in the 2021 census. Again, lots of important information coming out of the census that the census is attempting to ascertain. Yes. I know some of y'all were like, why is the census in my business? Premier, if you could encourage people to participate in the census, what would you say about that exercise?
Absolutely. It is essential for us. If people want the government to be in a position to have the best information and making policies, making decisions which best reflect and is as effective as possible for the benefit of the people of the country, we need data. We need information in order to do this. We need to know what the population numbers are. We need to know, the composition, what jobs exist, what roles people are performing, who is unemployed, who is going to school. We need a broad amount of information in order to have the data to best reflect the most positive decisions and to be as informed as possible when we're considering any decision making, any initiative, any policy for the people of the country. So I encourage people to participate. You do not have to be afraid. Obviously, you know as far as I'm aware, all of those individuals who are participating are vaccinated. All the census takers and enumerators are vaccinated. But you don't have to invite the people in and sit 2 feet away from them, and reach over and help to complete the form. They are very good at maintaining social distance, wearing masks, and being able to just have a chat with people to get the information that they need. Um, I've seen comments on some community chat groups about, I'm not letting them in and I'm not engaging. I don't want to tell them my business, whatever. This is a wrong approach. We're all in this together. We live in a country in particular that we can't drive somewhere to some other city to get a service. We can't, we've got to get on a plane to go somewhere, and we can't get services and goods in as quickly as other places can. You can't just go to the nearest big city and get what they have there and bring it in here very easily. So Cayman has its logistical challenges. It's the price of the reality of living in our paradise, and we need the government and those agencies and bodies that work within government and are part of the core civil service and wider public service. They need information. The policymakers need information in order to best make decisions which add to the collective good, to the collective benefit of the people of the country. So, folks, we are in this together. We are one country. Let's show some love for each other. Let's show some responsibility and our willingness to contribute to the collective good by participating in this. I mean, let me give you an example. One of the discussions that we've had, that I had with some public health folks a couple of weeks ago, was along the lines of the population number. Now, I don't know exactly what the population is, but I can tell you I have always felt that the assumed population number when I came into office of 65,000, 65, let's call it 65,500. I've always felt that number wasn't correct. That it's higher than that. Now, how much higher is it? I don't know. We've been utilizing this 71,000, and our vaccination rate has exceeded 80% of that. And as I said, I'm very happy about that. There were many people who said, that's nonsense. You're never going to be able to achieve that. That's unrealistic. So why set that as a target? Well, we set it as a target and we have achieved it. But what if the population is instead of being 71,000, what if it's 80,000 and we don't know, right? Then you're looking at possibly 69% or 70% as your current vaccination rate. And to be perfectly honest, that could have a significant impact. If that was the reality, that could have a significant impact on what our reality becomes, what the outcomes are for community transmission that we have now and community transmission that we'll have in the future, particularly when we have increased numbers of tourists. I don't believe, and our modeling shows that increased numbers of tourists, this is, I think, an important thing as well for people who are concerned about the quarantine envelope being lifted. Our modeling shows that we're not going to have significantly higher rates of sickness and hospitalization as a result of that, at least in the initial stages of it. If we start getting in the region of 50,000-60,000 people a month coming in, then we'll probably see an uptick. But if it starts off in the 20,000, 25,000 a month range, I don't think we're going to see a noticeable uptick in the numbers of those people that were getting infected and ending up in hospital. And one of the reasons for that, obviously, is that our requirement of only accepting tourists who are fully vaccinated is going to be a safe approach, a relatively safe approach to take. Does it guarantee that people will not be positive at some point? No, it doesn't. There is a risk to traveling, and people sometimes are careless in their approach. I mean, I've recently traveled, and I believe me, that's the first time I traveled since February 2020. So one of the things I did quite a bit was observe the way people are behaving, both in terms of how the authorities and how the regulators deal with the people and passengers, but also how people just in general were behaving. And most people were wearing masks, most people were sanitizing their hands, most people were being careful, but there's quite a decent number of people as well who were just walking around, no mask on. They're tired, they're rubbing their eyes, doing whatever. So you can see the potential, right? You can see the potential for people to get infected and to come in. But the average tourist comes to Cayman for, I think statistically, it's around 5.5 days. And given the incubation time, particularly with the Delta variant, which is somewhere around 3, 4, 5 days, I think the chances are people will come and leave before they develop and before they get sick, and before they become really infectious in Cayman. But obviously that's not 100% guarantee, or certainly it's not, from my perspective, it's not 100% comfort in terms of the theory. But it does mean, given that they're only on average here for less than 6 days, just less than 6 days, or around, let's call it 6 days, that there's going to be less of an opportunity for them to get sick and end up in hospital here, and less of an opportunity for them to contribute to community transmission. So our bigger threat is clearly our own level of community transmission, our own actions. I think there's another aspect that people need to be concerned about as well, or need to understand, let's say, which is, there's 2 points I want to make. Number one, for tourists, they come and they're sort of typically in their own little bubble. They're at the beach, they're at the hotel, they'll go to restaurants, they'll go to Stingray City. So it's somewhat limited to what they get engaged with. The other point I want to make is that the bigger threat for us as society, as our Caymanian society, is ourselves. If we travel, and we have had a lot of people traveling. I was having, I remember months ago having people writing emails to me complaining about some process to do with Travel Cayman, and saying, look, I know what I'm talking about because this is my 5th time quarantining. And I'm thinking to myself, 5th time quarantining? I haven't been off this island since February 2020, and you seem to be going and coming every month or two. So we've had a lot of people doing a lot of traveling, and people, our own residents, when they come home after having traveled, if they're not careful, if they've somehow gotten themselves exposed, guess what? They go to church, they go to parties, they go to the cinema, they go to the same restaurants as the tourists, but they also go and look for mommy and daddy, for grandma and grandpa, and other community places, community gatherings. So that risk of us ourselves contributing to community spread significantly after having traveled exists, and that is one of the comments from a colleague in the Turks and Caicos government was just that they found that one of the biggest risks that they've had, which contributed to their community spread, was from their own people doing a lot of traveling perhaps for unnecessary reasons. But whatever the case is, once the 20th of November comes, you can travel for whatever reason. There's right now we're well, I shouldn't say right now. As of September 9th, we shifted away from the repatriation flights regime, and now we're effectively into the open skies arena. But certainly that becomes fully effective once we drop the quarantine requirements for vaccinated travelers on the 20th. And I want people in the country to be very conscious and very aware of that, because they present a greater risk given the level of interaction with the broader community. They present a greater risk if they manage to get infected while they're traveling. So I would encourage people to be very vigilant, to be careful, and when after you've traveled, when you come home, try to make sure that you check yourself, use the lateral flow test, and ensure that you have a lower risk of being infected before you go around visiting everybody and doing what you would normally do. And I'm not talking about necessarily waiting 2 weeks for that, but checking yourself occasionally for a week or a week and a half with lateral flow tests, for example, is going to be helpful and a good indicator. One of the rules that are being implemented now will be a requirement for tourists to basically do lateral flow tests on the 2nd day and the 5th day and the 10th day if they're here that long. So even in relation to tourists, we are asking, they're coming in as vaccinated tourists. They've done a pre-flight PCR negative test. We're still looking to them to do lateral flow tests for the time period that they're here, so that we can sort of minimize the possibility that they may pop up as positive and be in an infectious state to pass it on and unfortunately contribute to community transmission. So this requires all of us to work together, to care about each other, and to show that care mankind and that love for each other, so that the collective benefit, the collective good is maximized.
Okay. All right. We do have King making the following point in terms of the census, and we're going to get back to some of the other questions here. But since we were just on this point, I thought it was a great idea to read this comment. So King says that, when the census asks you about how many TVs you have, tell them it's part of how they calculate quality of life. If poor people ignore these questions, and of course the only persons complying are upper class folks or higher earners, then the data will show that all is well and everyone is happy, yet NAU will sit there swamped. It's a good point that King makes. I'm also, I must say, I was a little bit perplexed when someone said, well, why do they want to know how much money we're making? Like what salary range we're in? And I said, you do understand that you guys sit here all the time and you complain about, for example, minimum wage, and the government needs to increase the minimum wage, when in fact, the government has no real data of how many people actually are impacted by the current minimum wage. So in other words, right, is that 5% of the population? Is that 10% of the population? Because you obviously need to treat that, oh, let's increase the minimum wage very, very differently if it impacts fewer people. Because increasing the minimum wage has a knock-on effect on the rest of the economy. And I keep saying this to people. Yeah. You increase the minimum wage, prices and everything go up. You don't increase the minimum wage in a bubble and nothing else happens except people make more money. Yeah. So I really hope that we'll have, I think it's Mr. Mustaf, Professor Mustaf, back on the show where he can kind of break down some of these things for us. But, our people have to be willing to educate themselves and to learn a little bit and to understand what is happening around us. So I'm just going to back up. I'm aware that I skipped over some questions.
want to thank King for that comment though, because it is very, very helpful, and for all the reasons that you have outlined. There's no sense us fooling ourselves, right? We can't talk about Cayman being successful and being this great utopia, and a place where a lot of people are doing well, when we know that we have a lot of people who are not. We've got to be realistic about it, and we've got to know what the picture is so that we understand the extent of the issue. We understand the extent of the inequality. We understand the extent of the disparity between those that have and those that have not, so that government can then properly, I don't know what kind of word that is, properly calibrate, properly calibrate our level of support for the people in the country. And it's not just about being a nanny state too. It's about making sure that we have programs in place that help elevate people and help lift them and provide opportunities so that everybody starts to do better, not just certain people. I am one thing I do not tolerate and I don't like at all is this situation where certain people may be okay, may be doing well because they come from a privileged position. I don't want to see that at all. I want to see every Caymanian being privileged with opportunity to be able to work and improve their position and do for their families. And the more information we have, the greater the reality will be presented to us, and we know exactly, or we have a much better idea of what the challenge is and how much we need to employ, and what kinds of tactics and what kinds of initiatives and strategies need to be employed in order to better the lives of our people. We are here because we want to improve the lives of our people, and we need information, good information, in order to be able to do that.
All right. So we have Cameron, who's asking a number of questions. This one says, happy for you, Premier. Glad that you had a dandy time. What are you doing about this outbreak? Why not lock down the island to control it? There are numerous workplaces and schools, lock it down. So when people tell you, Premier Panton, to lock down the country, what is your response to that?
Well, you lock it down, and then what? You reduce some of the community transmission through a lockdown, and then you reopen again, and then it all starts up again. Listen, we have last year, when we had no options, we had no vaccines, we had no medicine, no therapeutics on the horizon, no magic pills that we could just take one a day for 5 days, and reduce our risk of hospitalization and death by 50%. Lockdowns back then were the only thing you had going. Now we have pushed and we have achieved a high level of vaccination. I hope that our census numbers at the end of the day don't demonstrate that vaccination level is a lot lower than we anticipated. But I think either way, we are seeing the benefit of it. And we have put in place measures to continue to improve our level of vaccination. The Biden administration in the U.S. have now put in place a requirement as of yesterday, was it? Yeah, yesterday.
Yes, November 8th.
You have to be vaccinated, fully vaccinated, in order to travel to the U.S. And I haven't met one person here yet that wouldn't go and get vaccinated to
go for a shopping trip.
Go shopping, right? They need their retail therapy, so they'll take their medical therapy in order to do that. Yesterday was a good example. We had 300 plus people. I understand. I don't know the exact numbers. You mentioned it earlier. I don't know the exact numbers. I haven't had a report on it. But several times the line went from my Savannah office down to Chill Spot behind the gas station. Wow. So I want to thank the people who were patient and who waited in that line and were there to help contribute. There were people who were getting first shots, second shots, and booster shots. That was the largest number of people we've ever had there. But anyway, my point, getting back to lockdowns, is that is only something that I think we should consider is if we are in an extreme situation where our healthcare system is being overrun or about to be overrun. That it's only in that sort of scenario that I would suggest and that I would countenance a lockdown. Now we've got a risk matrix, and we're level 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is the deepest red we have, and that is where we consider factors like our healthcare capacity has basically been exhausted and we can't handle anymore. We do not want to get in that situation. So with this disease and this pandemic, you need to project, and you need to say, before you think, even before you have any evidence, if you just begin to have real concerns that you're going to be in that kind of situation, you need to start tightening up on the controls. You need to start doing it several weeks in advance in order for it to have the benefit, 3 or 4 weeks later. So I can tell you that right now we're on a sort of borderline between level 1 and level 2 in terms of community transmission, and we're looking at sort of rationalizing some of the controls that are in place, and in some cases a little bit tightening to ensure better enforcement. Overall, we're not at a position where we think we need to substantially ramp up the level of restrictions and implement additional significant levels of controls. But I promise you that this is something that certainly the health minister and myself and the rest of the government, we watch this every single day. And if we were in danger of getting to a point where our health system was going to be overrun, then and only then would the scenario of a lockdown be considered as a temporary measure to reduce the impacts on our health services. But generally, a lockdown is not something that is anything but a temporary reprieve. It was the only tool we had before, and the government last year successfully pursued a strategy of elimination, and that was great. The difficulty was always going to be reopening, because you can't stay locked down on a long-term basis. And the difficulty was always going to be reopening. The hard part is throwing all those balls up in the air and trying to juggle them all at the same time, while we are maintaining controls and dealing with pandemic circumstances. So I know that there are people who are unhappy about this or that, but trust me, there are certain people who are equally happy about the same circumstances. We're not going to make everybody happy all the time, but the one overriding thing is that we are trying to make sure that we control the pandemic circumstances and we maintain a level of safety and health as much as possible for people across the country. And also we are very cognizant, and we maintain our ability from a healthcare perspective to provide the level of services and to maintain the level of health of our people. Those are very, very critical issues for us. And as I said, it's only where we were in very dire circumstances and there was a huge risk that we were going to implode in terms of our healthcare capability would we consider a lockdown. And we would be taking action well before that appears to be the case.
All right, we got tons of questions. So Ms. Sue says, why aren't the lateral flow tests free as they are in the UK? And Ms. Sue, I was kind of curious about that. So I did have a look at what the UK is doing. And what I found out is they do have some free kits available if you meet certain criteria.
Right.
So it's not free for everyone. And the note actually says, if you cannot get tests from your work, school, college, university, ask them first, basically, or try to buy your own. Then they will assist you with getting some free tests, and you need to apply and go through this process. So it's not as though it's just free for anybody, I think.
Right.
And it reminds you here that a lateral flow test should be taken if you don't have symptoms of COVID-19. So just an
Right.
FYI.
Right. So if you're symptomatic, don't take a lateral flow test.
Yeah. And these are bits and pieces of information, can I say, because I didn't even realize that about being symptomatic. There's so much information out there, Premier Panton. And last week, Kevin and I were having this discussion. I think it was maybe Thursday's program about a bit of a breakdown in communication. So we feel, and I think the general public feels, like there's a lot of information out there. Sometimes it's very hard to understand all the bits and pieces of the current lateral flow policy, the current isolation policy. We think government, being the civil service arm of government, communications needs to do a better job of disseminating some of this information onto the public. It's been over a week now that we've invited anybody from public health to come on the program, break it down for us, break down, lateral flow policy, the isolation policy.
Right.
Because sometimes people are breaching it, not necessarily intentionally, but they just don't know. And I feel there's so many questions like, Sandy, I've got a positive in my household. What should I do? And I'm trying to refer people to an 11-page document and a 7-page document, knowing full well that the vast majority of people are not even going to read that. So is there any expectation that we could have better communication, better methods of deploying all of these messages and all this information?
So, Sandy, I'll be honest, I try to have a communications team meeting 3 times a week, usually Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, first thing in the morning. And a lot of these issues are things that we try to get addressed. Public health, it would be great if we had public health having the time to come on and do these things on a regular basis. But I don't think we need public health to do it. I think we have other people. We have other people who are more than capable of going through this information and providing clarity. And I'm going to try to make arrangements to push that further. We push information out through the usual channels. The problem is, as you have alluded to, having an 11-page or 15-page document, people are not going to read all of that, as you say. Right? They want bite-sized pieces of information that are relevant to them, and they want to be able to identify it easily. So those are some of the discussions that I've had recently. And it is a challenge sometimes to get everybody on board and to get this information agreed, to make sure everybody's had the opportunity to review it, provide any input, and then get it out. The plan in relation to the lateral flow test policy, national lateral flow test policy, is to break it down into chunks, into bite-sized pieces, and communicate that as regularly and often as possible. And I will through, and I want to, again, I know I've said this before a lot of times, but I want to tell you again, I truly appreciate on behalf of the government the extent to which you have engaged, and in particular, our friend Kevin Watler has engaged and utilized his specialized knowledge and experience working in this field in the U.S. You guys have done an amazing job with the guests that he's been able to line up and the information that has been provided. Accurate information, not just the nonsense that you get sometimes on YouTube with everybody who has a silly idea. And I want to thank you again for that. And I think we need to work more with media outlets such as yourself to make sure we get all this information out in pieces that people can more readily consume. Yes, I learn something new almost every day as well. And I think it's a challenge that we have to constantly try to achieve, to make sure that people are learning just as well as we are, and they understand they have the best information available to them, so that they can make the best decisions, and they can understand what the relevant information is, because understanding and having information really contributes to a level of I think people feel more in control. They feel less anxiety, and this is really important. I think to be able to ensure that even in these stressful times, we reduce the amount of discomfort, we reduce the amount of stress and anxiety that people feel. Situation is getting better. Our circumstances are relative to many other places are good, but statistics are statistics. If it's your child that's sick bad, it's your child that's sick bad, and you don't care about the statistics after that, right? There's a friend who says, if don't tell me about the 0.02%, because that could be my child. So the more information we have, the better off, the better informed we'll be, the better the decisions we'll make. And I think broadly speaking, the better the outcomes will be. So we're going to continue to try to push that. I agree with you that we need to do more, and that is something that we're pushing to try to do.
Okay. Now we have, I think this particular question is probably being asked by a lot of individuals, but we had Jesse that basically asked the same question. Salma asked the same question. Richie made a comment in relation to it. The fact that PCR testing, they're trying to schedule it, they're trying to get it done between Doctors Hospital and the HSA. It's just taking too long. Like literally, people are waiting past the 14 days sort of thing, and they're unable to get hold of anyone to get a test done. I mean,
you should get a result on a PCR test in no more than 48 to 72 hours. So I don't know. I can't imagine that the test itself is taking that long. It would have to be some sort of failure in communicating the result. And that is a failure, obviously, in itself, because you have now left somebody with a lot of uncertainty for 2 weeks about their status.
Yeah.
That is not good at all. Nobody, I mean, everybody who has ever been to the doctor knows that you go and do a test, and you have a period of time within which you expect the doctor to come back to you and tell you what your test results are. And if once you pass that period of time, you start thinking, oh my God, it must be bad news if he hasn't responded. That's not necessarily the case, but it is not something that is acceptable for people to go that period of time and not know their status. I mean, the implications is not just an implication of whether I am sick. It's an implication of whether I am sick and able to transmit this to other people, and I may be ignorantly, not knowing my status, going about inadvertently infecting other people. So that is an issue that we need to get on top of. I don't know why that would be the case. I truly don't know. And that is something that, and the more we hear about these types of circumstances, the more empowered we are to put pressure on the system to say, here are real life examples of what's going wrong. Let's get this fixed.
Right.
So I want to thank people, please be accurate. Don't exaggerate the circumstances. Be accurate and tell us exactly what your circumstances are, exactly what's going on. And as I said before, Sandy, yourself, that I'll pick up the phone and call people to find out what's going on. I mean, I called a lady on the weekend after coming into quarantine, and I said, ma'am, I don't know your name, but this is Wayne Panton, and I understand you're having some difficulties. She said, Wayne Panton who? I said, well, I only know of one Wayne Panton, ma'am, but you may know some others. I don't. She says, well, Wayne Panton who? And I said, well, sometimes I'm called the Premier. And she says, oh my God, you're calling me? But this, I don't care. I will roll up my sleeves and do what I have to do.
And I must tell you,
these are our people, and if we can't respond to our people and try to help them, I'm sorry, but that's just what we have to do.
And she reached out yesterday saying that she was very, very grateful for the assistance. She personally messaged me and just wanted to say thank you for for assisting her. So I know that she's definitely in a much better position as a result of this.
That's wonderful to hear.
Yeah,
wonderful to hear.
So Sharon wants to know, after November 20th, will fully vaccinated travelers from the U.S. without a PR code still have to quarantine?
Fully vaccinated travelers from the U.S. without a QR code. No, you don't have to quarantine. If there will be a process through which you upload your vaccination documentation into a portal that I'm not sure whether that's going to be a CBC portal or whether it's a Travel Cayman portal. Doesn't really matter for these purposes. Just that there is a portal that will be available, and the process effectively will be that you submit your vaccination documentation, you submit all your other travel detail documentation. Our people here will verify. They'll take whatever steps they need to take to verify the vaccination status through the documentation that is provided, and then they will issue you with a travel authorization or travel authorization certificate. I'm not sure what the nomenclature is for it, but you will get an authorization saying yes, you comply with the requirements in terms of your vaccination status, and you are able to travel. Then there's a separate aspect of it, which is complying with the 72-hour, no more than 72-hour PCR negative test. But let's put that aside for the moment. In relation to the testing, in relation to vaccination status, that is going to be ascertained by officers, by authorities in Cayman through this portal, and they get the traveler who is vaccinated will get a travel authorization in order to come in.
Mm-hmm. All right. So Jesse says the Ministry of Health should have been preparing the HSA for the reopening and testing. Shameful lack of leadership and support of our frontline workers. That's Jesse's opinion. Darlene says, with no disrespect.
Hang on a second with that.
Okay.
I don't think that's fair at all. I mean, the HSA is a statutory authority, right? To the extent that it's a statutory authority with their own board of governance and their own management. To the extent that there are policies that need to be pushed to the HSA or any other health service provider from the Ministry of Health, that is obviously something that's being done. But the minister and the Ministry of Health is not in a position and cannot go in and micromanage the HSA. The way it has been set up is as a separate, self-governed statutory authority. Yes, we can push directives and we can push some policy perspectives and we can tell people to be ready. But the ministry itself can't get in there and interfere and do what they, roll up their own sleeves and deal with that situation. So everybody has to be working together. Public health is also a different component from the HSA itself. It is at this moment part of the HSA. That may change. There has been an assessment done, I think, from years ago now, which basically suggested that it would be better to have public health as a separate unit of the Ministry of Health and Wellness. So that's something that we'll have a look at. That study was done, I think, must be 10 years ago, and nothing had been done about it. It hadn't been reconsidered. but it is something that we'll now have a look at to see, based on all of our experience, based on the lessons we've learned, is it better to realign public health separately from the HSA? That's something that we'll be considering soon.
Okay. King has a question about ganja. King, but I invite you to save that question for another day. He does go on to say that this is the premier man on a launch, some good questions, and there's tons of questions. I realize I'm actually behind, so I'm just going to try to get through some of those. Let's switch over to the what's up questions. Some of those have been coming in. So one parent wants to know, let me just see here. One parent wants to know, obviously her child is now in isolation, and she's asking, her daughter's been in quarantine for 6 days, and there's been no help or contact from HSA. So a lot of people are waiting on HSA to contact them, or I guess public health technically, and like you said, they're kind of confusing the two. They're waiting for them to contact them, and then they're also saying that if they call the flu hotline, they're having an issue there. So remember, folks, there has been a new isolation assistance program set up. So let's make sure that we have all of those contact details. But the question here is, why is government not providing school lunches to students who are in quarantine? So I know this government recently launched a free lunch program for kids when they're in school, but I guess that's a fair point, because maybe some of those same disenfranchised children are now at home without a meal.
Well, I mean, that's
logistically a big problem.
That adds an additional logistical problem. And the way we have been trying to address the problem of people getting food at home is through a combination of efforts involving some of hazard management, helping out the Red Cross, as well as in at least initially it involved a lot of people from public health being on board and doing that as well. So it's for us, I think it's about making sure that the entire family who may be
is supported,
and not just taking school lunches and delivering to children. I mean, you would hope that if they're at home and they have enough food at home, sorry, that they're being taken care of.
Yeah, it's a tough situation for families, for sure. And someone also wanted to know.
It's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge.
Yeah.
Sometimes it feels, and I know for families it probably feels like an insurmountable issue, and sometimes for those in government, you feel that it's a very, it's a challenge that it's nearly impossible to meet expectations of everybody. But you just got to keep going at it. No matter how difficult it is, you've got to keep going at it, because these are our people and we've got to help people. We've got to get through this together. This is not going to go on forever, but it is a challenge that we've got to get through together. We've got to get to the other side of this together, however long that takes.
And folks, people are also asking Premier about the ex gratia payments, and once you apply for that, how long is it taking for them to receive some sort of response on that one? Any idea?
I don't know. I don't have an indication right now of the timeline that's involved with that, to be perfectly honest. I don't know. I wouldn't expect it to be taking more than at most a couple of weeks, but I don't have that metric available to me at this point.
Because there's a verification process, folks. So it's not like you just apply and they're going to hand you a check. They need to make sure that you are employed and that you're actually in isolation for specific reasons and so on. So maybe we'll try to reach out to which government agency or department is actually handling that.
That is being handled through the it's under the Deputy Premier's ministry. I'm not sure whether it's the Ministry of Finance or whether it's I'm not sure I'm not sure exactly which one. I'll have to speak with him about it and get some clarity, and I'll send you a message to confirm that so you can relay that.
Right. Okay. Let me just see what other questions we have coming in. We've got quite a few. So, folks, I also want to remind you all that the November vaccine schedule is out. There is a version 2. So let me just ensure that we've got the latest version available for everyone to have a look at. I know a lot of you will message me on a regular basis asking me, where can I go today? So here is the vaccine schedule. The HSA is also hiring. So, folks, I posted this last week. They're looking for nurses, nurses assistants, and healthcare aides. So if you enjoy, helping people and working with people, there's also part-time opportunities available for various shifts that include evenings and weekends. So definitely reach out to the HSA HR department for some of those bits and pieces of information. Employment, if you're looking for jobs. Let me just go back, Premier Panton, to some of the questions that had come in prior to the show.
Sure.
So we have a question about Savannah Primer, but can I suggest we do that another day and kind of keep it COVID related?
Right.
So this question is about government assistance. So the first question is, can the banks offer a 1 to 2 month mortgage waiver from December of 2021 to January of 2022? Obviously, you can't speak for the banks, but what would you think about them? I know most of them extended up to 6 months already, or maybe even more, of a waiver last year.
I think the banks have at least the vast majority of them, the approach that has been taken has been quite helpful. They have been lenient. They have had programs in place. Interestingly, some of the biggest complaints I had was people who were saying, well, I didn't ask for this kind of break, and therefore you should credit me with, and with all the payments that I made and not charge me interest on this program. And they've been fairly good from what I can see. I think the advice that I've always given people in relation to banks is be very honest with your bank, and have a conversation about where things are at, and what assistance you need as early as possible. The sooner you do it, the more honest you are. I think generally, the better the outcome. So as to whether they're going to do that for December and January, I can certainly have a conversation with the Bankers Association, but unless I think at this point, particularly given that we are going through a transition reopening phase, which is more positive, which is creating more opportunities, they may be more willing to hold on and work with people. I'm not sure that they're going to agree anything that has been requested like that, but as I said, they will work with people, and I think with the growing opportunities, I think that will give them greater confidence to be more helpful, and to recognize the circumstances and the opportunities that are presented by this.
So Charlene is reminding me to get to the WhatsApp questions, which I am. Good morning to Andrew. So we had another question, and someone was also asking about additional pension withdrawals. I did try to help this person recognize that sort of knock-on effect that we were talking about earlier, like increase the minimum wage. If you allow people to completely deplete their pensions, which a lot of people probably did with the first drawdown, what's the knock-on effect?
Well, I mean, I think back in the late 90s, we implemented a national pension system, because we recognized then that many companies did not have. It was only the multinational companies really that offered pension products, and pension benefits, I should say, to their employees. Most of the companies that came on did not, and the reality is, if people would save on their own and recognize that, they may live 20 years beyond when they retire, the point that they generally would expected to retire, and they need to be able to save and to be able to afford life for that period. If they would do that on their own, we wouldn't need to worry about pensions. The reality is most people don't. Most people don't think that far down the road. And also, many people are in circumstances where, it's very difficult for them to effectively plan. They're worried more about how they're going to make a living day to day, and how they're going to, meet some of their expenses day to day. And the national pension plan was effectively put in place to ensure that, there would be something. They would have something available to them in their retirement years. The reality, though, is that what we put in place was not anywhere near what was needed. And now we have for, whatever the rationale, whatever you want to argue about the pension access that was granted last year, it did help some people. Some people, I think, just wasted it on unnecessary things, but it did help a lot of people. But what it has done is it has significantly eroded the level of pension benefits that have existed for people. And we already know that we need pension reform in order to improve the level of pension benefits that are available to people. And we can't go back. We can't keep going backwards by eroding, what little system or little pension benefits we have, just because somebody, wants access to it right now to help their problem right now. They need to be able to resolve this situation. We need to be able to resolve the situation through pension reform so that their future is protected. It is a difficult thing, I know, and a lot of people look at it and say, well, it's my money and I can spend it however I want. Well, yes and no. I mean, the 5% that's taken from you now, that's your money, but the 5% that comes from employers, that is regarded as their contribution to the betterment of your future and your post-retirement years. And should you be able to just take that and utilize that how you want? My argument would be no. Now, if we were in a situation where it was warranted and there was no other option, would I consider it? Yes. Would I consider it right now? I don't think so. I think it would be making a bad situation worse.
All right. So Christopher wants to know what's the procedure for travelers coming to Cayman when the border reopens on November 20th. Is approval required from Travel Cayman? So I think this question might have been answered because you're a little bit behind, but you did mention there's a portal that will go out for people to upload their documents that need to be verified.
Correct. So whether you have a QR code or whether you have documentation without a QR code, you can upload that information to the travel portal. And they will, if it's a QR code, obviously you get it very quickly. It might take a couple days to verify the vaccination records if you don't have an electronic verification. And then they'll issue you with a travel certificate, a travel authorization.
Okay. Ms. Iva says
you still would have to take the pre-flight PCR and get a negative on that as well.
Right.
So that is the second element that I mentioned where you have to, I don't think we've determined exactly whether you would log back into the system and update that or whether you would present that to the airlines. I think airlines, it seems to me that a lot of the airlines don't want to take the responsibility of checking these things. So we've got to work out exactly how that works, but we'll get that sorted out in the next few days.
So Ms. Iva is saying, what happens when someone is at home with someone that tests positive, and when you report it, no one from public health even reaches out to the family? So again, I think we touched on that a little bit earlier, but that's an unfortunate situation, and it shouldn't happen.
and we need to have public health do a better job of reaching out and addressing those scenarios. Public health has, we've been pushing for the capacity to be built across the board to address these issues. As we've said before, none of this comes with a playbook that you can say this is how you do it. So we're looking at the experiences of other countries. We're looking at our own experiences over time, and in particular our own experiences since the beginning of September, when we first started having these incidents of community transmission. And we're trying to respond, and we're building out capacity and hiring new people into public health to work with them. But it doesn't happen overnight, and there will be issues. It's unfortunate, and I apologize for those people who are not getting calls, and I can promise you that I will be going back and saying exactly what I've been saying before. We've got to do better. We've got to do better. We've got to do better.
And just an FYI, folks, I am screen grabbing some of your comments. So El Ray and Melanie asking different questions, one about concessions and one about the environment. So I think the next show that the Premier comes on for his Q&A segment, we will definitely do the environment and talk about COP26 in a little bit more detail. So Mel, hang on. We're going to come to you. So James wants to know, why would tourists come here? We're a high-risk location with our current positivity rate, and our test to release policy could see tourists prevented from traveling here for weeks or even months after their departure date. So why are we still a desirable jurisdiction? I mean, do we look at places like Jamaica and TCI who've had an upsurge in tourism, although they've been dealing with COVID?
Yeah, I missed the last bit of that comment, but just in general, I mean, Jamaica has a much higher positivity rate.
And a much lower vaccination rate. Dominican Republic, the same. TCI has had some real issues as well. And during the period of time in which they have had high transmission, they have had, they've been saying we've got record tourism going on as well. Jamaica, I don't know what their tourism numbers look like, but I haven't heard that, that they have had some major drop off. Yes, we will have comments made. We may have the CDC issuing, the statements of, this is what Cayman is, as they do for any other country. But I do not believe that it. I do not believe that it will impact us in the way that some people seem to be suggesting. And I think it's rather unfortunate that we have some of the political element in particular making comments that, Cayman is going to suffer because of the community transmission, and that people are going to lose their jobs and lose their homes and all the sort of, doomsday kind of predictions. That is just crazy and irresponsible and unacceptable for those kinds of comments. I mean, whose side are you on? Which team are you on if you're not on Cayman's team, right? Whatever your political persuasion, that's just irresponsible and ridiculous. We, irrespective of when or how this community transmission came about, we are in a position that we would be in at some point if we had the borders open. There's no escaping it. We need to actually, as I've said before, we need to take responsibility, all of us collectively, individually, and we've got to try to reduce the level of local transmission. There's no question about that. But we are going to have local transmission irrespective of when the borders are open. The opposition wanted them open on September 1st. We held off until September 9th as the day we were shifting into phase 3. We then paused phase 3 because of the significant outbreak at Georgetown Primary, and the way it was clear to us that the population, by and large, were not ready for the transition. We are now a lot more ready, and people
there are still people who are concerned. I still get messages from people saying, please don't reopen. And I understand those concerns, but we can't keep ourselves isolated. We've got to move forward, and we've got to do it as safely as possible. And that's what we're trying to achieve. And obviously, as I said, one of the strategies with that is to push vaccination as high and the rate as high as possible. And we have achieved our target, and we're going to exceed our target. We have exceeded our target, and that's going to continue to grow. When we, hopefully, it won't be too long before we get the approval for children between 5 and 11. Pardon me. And I know that there are parents who have indicated to me that they want to be able to vaccinate their children. So the number is going to continue to go up. Sorry, I'm going to drink some water here.
Yeah, so you got to have that ready when you come on here, because trust me, lots and lots of questions. I've got my handy water available here.
A lot of talking.
Lots of talking. Someone was asking about who will provide the lateral flow test to tourists. So how will that work when they come in? Are they purchasing these, or?
There will be. I think the tourism stakeholders are finalizing the calibration of that and what the details are around that. I don't think we're just going to be giving them the lateral flow test, but we're talking about 2 tests per tourist, effectively on average, given the 5.5 or 6 days average stay. So if we're doing it on day 2 and day 5, that's going to be 2 tests. So that may be done through the hotel. That may be done through public health. That may be done through Travel Cayman or something like that. That detail has not been worked out. We just know that we're going to be doing this, and it's quite, in my mind, it would be appropriate for tourists to be paying for that rather than the government itself. But again, that's subject to change.
Yes. So I do see a number of questions about children and lateral flow tests. So I'm going to invite you to kind of rewind the program, because that was covered. Here's a question. Will government recognize Caymanians who have had the virus but not the vaccine for traveling back home? So in other words, they have like an antibodies test that they can produce.
I think that is a question which the chief medical officer has been considering. At this point, the answer is no, but it could be that a policy gets adopted, which, for example, says that up to 3 months after you have recovered from COVID, you may be regarded as having sufficient antibodies. But don't buy the line that you see, the narrative that you see put out there very often, that natural immunity developed from recovering from COVID is for life, and that it is better than the vaccine and all that sort of stuff. That is patently untrue. Study after study has demonstrated that. So yes, the answer is yes, we may get to that point, but we're not there just yet. We're trying to deal with a myriad of other issues at the same time. And that is one thing that we may get to, just not yet.
Okay. And another question along this similar line, is if a person is coming from any country where vaccination cannot be confirmed by Cayman, but they have a vaccination certificate from origin country, would an apostille be valid? So that's a very specific question, but basically about the verification of a vaccine. Well, so I would ask, why wouldn't it be something that we could confirm? Like, I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that if there's sufficient documentation around it to confirm it, then our people would be able to confirm it. in the absence of a QR code.
Right.
But remember that the rule is, if you are coming from a country with a single dose vaccination record of 60% or greater, then you don't need to you don't need to have a electronic verification, and it can be verified through the portal with Travel Cayman. If, however, you're coming from a country which has a vaccination record of less than that, then you need to have a QR code so that it is securely verified, or you end up doing the I don't know if it's 10 days or 14 days quarantine.
Mm-hmm. CJW White says you need to address the issues with the flu hotline. It's crazy, and the employees are very unprofessional. I know some are still quarantined after 17 days, and they keep on giving them the runaround. And I think they're understaffed. Public health is so slack with customer service. So CJ White asking for customer service training as well as additional agents. Hero Blair, good morning to you. Says congratulations to Sandy and Kevin for their input. Mr. Premier, that deserves being on the honors list next time. Oh, we don't need any accolades like that. Let's calm down. We're just doing our part.
I agree, though.
We are just doing our part. Trust me. So Patricia says, when a classmate is positive, other students are tested, and if negative, can go to school. So why are unvaccinated minors required to quarantine if negative?
Unvaccinated. Sorry, repeat that. Go back to that one.
She says when a classmate is positive. So this is the confusion of that whole
right
lateral flow and isolation policy. But when a classmate is positive, other students are tested, and if negative, can go to school. So why are unvaccinated minors required to quarantine if negative? So
that's the same question about why don't that is effectively the same question, but why can't you apply the lateral flow test process to unvaccinated minors traveling in? I think the reality for us there is, the students that are here, these are our people, these are our residents, they are here, and when there are positives in the school, we want to be able to utilize the lateral flow test to allow them to continue to go to school, to get all the benefits of that, all the interpersonal benefits and all the educational benefits of that. That is a problem for us, and that is a solution for us to help us with our people, our residents. The question about having unvaccinated minors coming in and utilizing lateral flow tests in relation to them, that is a whole other scenario and a different proposition. And for right now, the view is, we're not going to go down that path. That's not the same scenario as utilizing LFTs to ensure that our children who remain negative can go to school and get the benefits of that. That's a different scenario altogether. We may get there, and in 4 or 5 weeks after, or 6 weeks after we look at what's happened after the quarantine envelope has dropped on the 20th, we may look at that and say, okay, we think we're in a position to make a decision in relation to this. But for right now, the medical advice has been, don't add that level of risk just yet.
So Janet,
it's
time already.
You're gonna have to let me off. I have cabinet this morning, so I've already been ducking some phone calls. So I know people are getting frantic, thinking I'm not available.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm sort of banking questions for the next time, folks, that the premiere is on, and we can kind of broaden the scope. I know we wanted to cover a lot of COVID-related stuff, but my goodness, the questions are still coming in hot and heavy. But Premier, again, thank you for joining the program this morning. We appreciate you taking a few hours out of your busy schedule to be with us. And hopefully in another couple of weeks, folks will be rejoining us. It's going to be a Q&A segment with the Premier at least twice per month. We'll get started. So get your questions ready for the next time. And my apologies for not being able to get through all of them. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Thank you, and thank you very much. Thank you for all you do, and thank you to the people of Cayman. Thank you to all your listeners and viewers. Really appreciate the level of interaction, and you know, we are going to continue to work together. We're one Cayman. We're going to succeed. We're gonna help each other get there. Okay. I appreciate the issues, and we're constantly working to try to address them. So please continue to inform us of the problems you're having, so that we can work on resolving those and providing solutions as quickly as possible. Thank you all very much. Love you all. Take care. Have a great day, and enjoy the rest of the week.
All right. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. All right, folks. So stay tuned. I'm still going to read some of your comments. Clifton says, thanks, Honorable Premier. Denise says, if employees refuse to pay, who pays? Well, please be reminded that there is an ex gratia payment that has now been implemented. Now, I know this only applies to Caymanians, but if you're in a situation where you're in isolation, folks, and you're unable to get paid, you can apply. There's the criteria. I think we posted the article. Let me just see if I can give you guys the link again. We posted the article on our website recently. So the link is in the article on how to apply. The criteria which you need to use to apply as well is also in that article. So the government has set aside $1 million at this stage. This was announced. We put it up on October the 24th. I think it was announced the day before at a press conference. You're welcome, Clinton. He's joining us from Oklahoma. So there's the link. Have a look at that article that will tell you the criteria. I do appreciate it's only for Caymanians, but I think the government, only has so much of a budget that can only stretch so far. So Soka, thank you so much. I also got a question about free lunches. Let me just see where that message is again. So someone basically said that lunches are available and they're being delivered by buses. Let me just see where that is. Give me 1 second. Who sent that to me? Oh, yikes. Somebody sent it. Okay. Well, somebody sent it. Let me see if I can find it again. I think the Premier just resent it as well. Right. So he says all students who are in required isolation are still receiving school lunches. The bus companies are delivering the lunches. And if a parent is keeping the student home at their own choice, they'll not get the meal. So that's a different situation. If a family is not receiving these lunches, they can contact the school or the Department of Education Services. So that's the protocol, folks. So again, if you require the free lunch service, apparently that is continuing. So please, let me just send this to the person who asked. Please reach out to the school or the Department of Education Services, and they will assist with those. So thank you, Ms. Sue. Soka is here asking about tests per box. Shahini says, my family and I went to the US over the school break, all vaccinated, myself being the most nervous, armed with bleach wipes and sanitizer and mask. After seeing the way that the rest of the world was moving, I was shocked and felt very relaxed after a few days. Tested negative prior to arriving and tested negative after my 7-day quarantine, even though we did everything possible while away, including going to carnival and fair. So Shahini is basically saying that, listen, folks, the rest of the world has moved on and they're living life fairly normally. And Cayman is still, in this bubble, which, by the way, I don't know if you guys saw the news as it relates to COVID related news, but Europe is the new hotspot for COVID infections. And so their numbers are surpassing everybody else at the moment. So, I mean, that is what it is. Someone said, I missed your live at the premiere. I've been looking for the updates website about quarantine for the 20th, but can't find it anywhere. Do you know what's the plan? So I think that it needs to be launched. I think that was supposed to go live last night. So let me see if I can get some additional updates on that. Let me see. What are the questions we have? Someone said, can you ask the Premier why is private sector not supporting staff with rapid tests. Thank you. Well, listen, private sectors has even gone as far as saying, they highly recommend, a lot of them, that you get vaccinated. If you choose not to get vaccinated, you will have to do weekly PCR tests for your employment, and you do that at your cost. Listen, I think companies will only absorb so much cost. Everybody's in this together. We're all making choices about our level of risk and so on. Some people mentioned earlier in the program that there's some people who are being extremely irresponsible with the choices that they're making. And I think, to be fair to companies, they will be making decisions to just keep you employed. And you may not understand the reality of how hard it is right now for companies to continue to keep you employed. A lot of people haven't lost their jobs. They haven't gotten a pay cut, et cetera, although some businesses have shut down. And if you want that to continue being the position, what's more important to you? Public sector giving you, private sector, giving you a free lateral test and putting more burden on themselves, or them maintaining the situation and saying, hey, this is what we can do. Some companies, we pointed this out before, like Foster's, has already given their staff pay increases, cost of living increases. So folks, I think we need to be very realistic. Like, there is no such thing as a free lunch. Now, I know y'all getting a free lunch from government, but let me encourage you to go through life understanding, in the vast majority of cases, there is no such thing as a free lunch. We all need to be as resilient as we possibly can on an individual level, take accountability for our decisions and the things that we're doing. And we've all screwed up. We've all overspent, gone over budget, made purchases that in retrospect we're like, oh my God, I could kick myself for that purchase. I didn't need it. It was a want. Now I don't have money to pay my bills. But if we also, on this other hand, don't learn to be more responsible with our finances and take personal accountability and stop waiting for other people to bail us out, I think that we need to have those types of tough discussions too. We've all been in credit issues. We've all been on the verge of bankruptcy. Why are we tethering on not being able to pay our bills every single month? We need to have those conversations. We need to have some finance people on this program who can tell us how to get it together, how to save money, how to spend your money more wisely, rainy fund jar, all those things we definitely need to do. So someone just said that their company is actually supplying lateral flow tests. And that's DMS. So DMS is going to do it for their staff. We don't, like I said, a lot of companies may not be in the position to do it. So hats off to the ones that can and that do it. CJW says, I enjoyed this discussion. You're most welcome. Denise is asking about the hardship stipend. So I think I mentioned that before, right? This is the ex gratia payment of $1 million that has been set aside. Fully vaccinated traveling back after the 20th. Say the 19th arrived, do they quarantine for 5 to 10 days or just day one? Well, listen, Kerwin, sorry. If it says that it goes into effect on the 20th, you can't expect to get the benefit on the 19th. This is just how it works. So it's going to be for people arriving on or after the 20th. Simple? Yes. Because I've got people, I'm coming in at 17th. That ain't the 20th. So you can't keep sliding the rules all over the place because then you confuse people. So no, the 20th going forward is the policy. We'll try to get confirmation on the portal as soon as it goes live. Yes, lateral flow tests are always going to be self-administered. I don't think anyone's going to show up to your door to do a lateral flow test. Jonathan saying he's like to see angel investors come to Cayman. So travel time, I'll reach out to them about that website. I'm also going to reach out to the census folks to see whether or not they'd be willing to come in the program, because I realized that a lot of your questions had to do about the census today. So it'd be useful to have them in the program. So Ms. Janet shares that her brother-in-law went to get tested, and because he doesn't have an email, they told him to come back the next day. He went back the next day, but it was not ready to come back to day 2. Good thing he did not go back because he was positive, and they called him to find out why he didn't come back for his results. Hello, he's positive, and they want him to come back out and get his results. So here's the thing, folks. I mean, listen, this is the 21st century, and I think we assume that everybody has email. But the reality is that there might be people who actually do not have access to email. So what I would recommend is, if you don't have access to email personally, try to get the email address of someone that you trust, that you can get your test results sent to. If I didn't have an email, I would say, here's my husband's email address, send it to him. That's fine if he knows that I'm positive. We're in the same household, not a big deal. But you've got to understand that the system can only meet you halfway with all these exceptions and all this sort of stuff happening, right? So folks, if you, again, are in a position, you know that you're going to go in and get tested. Now you know they're emailing you results to try to expedite the process, because they can't call every person. Every phone call is probably at least a 10 to 15 minute phone call. So they're saying, listen, we can have someone sitting at a computer and moving a lot faster and being able to, get you the results quicker by email. So you, going back to personal responsibility and accountability, need to make sure that when you go in, you are ready with an email address, even if it's not your personal address. We all know they want to send it by email. Now, I have suggested they could just as easily send it by WhatsApp, because everybody has WhatsApp. I don't think they've taken that suggestion on board, but text, WhatsApp, or email. Like, I would give people the options, really, because WhatsApp messages, I'm more likely to see a WhatsApp message immediately than even a text message or even an email, right? Everybody's on their WhatsApp, but they haven't done that. So it's email. So if you don't have access to an email, when you go in there, you need to be saying, listen, I don't have access to email, but here is an alternative or an email address that you can send it to, that someone is, number one, checking, because you don't want to send it to the person who never checks their email. And then they can contact you or WhatsApp you to say, yes, honey, you're positive. Here are your results, right? So think about how you can help the process. I mean, we don't always have to sit back and wait for government to do every single thing for us. We should be a little bit more self-reliant. So big shout out to your friends over at Recover Cayman. If you get in a vehicular accident, they're the experts that you want to go to in terms of your legal experts, who are going to give you no charge, free advice for what your, what possibilities in terms of recovering any money. If you're injured in particular, you will definitely want to speak to them.
Accidents happen at any time, when you least expect it. Be prepared. Reach out to Recover Personal Injury Attorneys. We don't get paid until you recover.
And boy, are they absolutely 100% correct about accidents happening at any time. Trust me. Someone actually caught the accident that happened on Saturday at that intersection, like, the Mango Tree, Foster's, Aeropost intersection. Super busy. I hate coming out of there, because I always feel like, oh, this is a high risk intersection, because it's a roundabout basically that everybody's going into. And you've got people coming from all sorts of directions, not always paying attention. And it was raining on Saturday, so that made it even worse, because y'all know you can't drive even when the weather's perfect, much less when it's raining. So that was an accident, and someone actually caught it. Their dash cam caught it. I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. Isolation support line. If you need help, this is isolation support line and email address. There's a toll-free number, a regular phone number, and an email address, folks. So please make note of that for your benefit. Don't forget, if you're ordering and shipping anything to the Cayman Islands, you want to...
Ho, ho, ho! It's that time of year again. Christmas is right around the corner, and you do not want to delay. Because of COVID-19, there are numerous logistics delays expected. Give yourself the gift of a true Christmas miracle by planning ahead with Miracle Brokers. Whether you're moving halfway around the world or ordering a new car for your loved one, contact Miracle today at 949-5989.
Yes, folks. Contact Miracle today. They've got you covered. So I know we've gone a little bit into overtime. I've got a 10:30 meeting that I'm going to jettison off to. My apologies if we did not get to all of your questions. Like I said, I've screenshot some of them. If we if we can get to them the next time. So again, the Premier has committed to at least twice per month coming on the program. I'll get the next date from him shortly. In terms of, just Q&A, you're just asking questions. Today's Q&A was obviously specific to a lot of the COVID and the reopening stuff. We will do, I think, the next show, on the environment, because this is something that is of particular interest to us, and a lot of us are very, very concerned about. So we will get that done as well. My apologies. I'm just doing a few little things here. So, yeah, send your questions through and I'll definitely save them up for him. There was a ton of questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. Tiffany, that question was asked and answered already. Tourists will be responsible for their own lateral flow test, basically. So thank you, Soka, Kerwin. At one point, we had over 433 people on the live stream. Appreciate all of you tuning into the program today with your questions and comments. There's a few that I saw were hyper-focused on negative comments. Cameron, I noticed your comments were all negative pretty much, but you know what? I think the Premier did his best to answer your questions. We didn't get to all of them because you did ask a lot of questions as well. I did notice. And I would invite you to, folks, just to listen to the answers, go back and rewind the program, and you'll hear that you probably have a question that was already answered. And my apologies if I did not get to all of your questions, but I'll try to, okay. So someone says John A. Cumber is not providing school lunches to schools and required isolation after positive tests, huh? Really? So how can John A. Cumber have a different policy than the rest of schools? That don't make no sense. Okay. That truly makes no sense. And maybe that's just like a message from the Premier saying, John A. Cumber, get it together. What are y'all doing? Okay, that's it. Thank you very, very much, folks. Got to get to work now. Got stuff to do. I feel like every single day, this person says they reached out to Department of Education Services and got it sorted. So the school may not be on the ball, but Education Services is. I feel like every single day, folks, I don't know if this ever happens to you, but you've only got so many hours in a day. We get the same 24 hours. And my gosh, some days I feel like I do one or two things and then it's time to pick my daughter up from school. I'm like, where did the time go? I still got so much more to do. And I try to work in the evenings as well. Folks, we're aware of the CDC notice. They have heightened the alert for the Cayman Islands, and I'm going to have that put up on the website shortly. I've sent that up. I sent that out to my writer already. What I can tell you is that was to be expected, quite frankly. And not only is it to be expected, but even in the US and Europe, their numbers are skyrocketing and rising. And yeah, they're going to raise the alert, but that doesn't mean that it's going to stop people from coming in. And if people don't listen, if we only have an increase of 10-15% for tourists coming in, then that's 10-15% more than what you have. And that helps to agitate the, in a positive way, the economy a little bit. So we're not saying that come November 20th, we're going to have droves of people coming into our borders. This is only phase 4. Remember, we haven't even gotten to the next phase. So this is a slow, progression to get to, where we are just having to live with COVID. And yes, our numbers have increased. We do have community spread. I noticed that someone said, oh yeah, they're trying to blame the community spread on the community as opposed to blame it on the tourists. And I'm like, well, it's not a matter of blame. These are like factual numbers, like 2% of the positives right now are from incoming travelers. So, I don't know what to say. Like some people will there's confirmation bias. People will only see what they want to see. And there's no talking to those people otherwise, really, because no matter what you say to them about this is what vaccination numbers say, this is what, they're always going to find a creative way to try to get around what is the real world reality. It kind of reminds me of what I was experiencing watching between Friday and yesterday, this young lady testify in the Tortuga robbery, which we're going to talk about on Friday. Y'all want to tune in for that show. It's like people can convince themselves of anything. I am now convinced of that. I mean, trust me. They can tell the biggest lie in the world and they believe that lie themselves. We're going to talk about it on Friday, specific to that case. But that basic comment goes above and beyond, the Tortuga robbery case. A lot of y'all are just convincing yourself of stuff that isn't even true, right? It just isn't true. But you still tell yourself that it's true. And the statistics don't support your anecdotal stories or any of that. And you still insist on telling yourself that that is what it is. Folks, do not forget this evening, tune in at 7 p.m. Kevin will be interviewing Dr. Kumar from Total Health, discussing diabetes and COVID-19. 7 p.m. You do not want to miss this conversation. We know a lot of people in the Cayman Islands are diabetic, they're pre-diabetic, and you want to hear more about that as it relates to COVID. So thank you guys so much for tuning into the program today. Love you guys so much. Thank you for your support. Thank you for all of your questions. And again, my apologies that we couldn't get to all of them, but I will save a lot of those for the next time. And you guys have yourselves an absolutely fantastic, fabulous, off the chain Tuesday.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.